Did you know that when your rear wheel is deeper than your front wheel, that you can actually have a more stable bike in crosswind? Let's learn about center of pressure and why this is true. For starters, let's look at the two wheels. The front wheel is the one that you're really concerned with because it has a steering axis. In the wind, it can twist in your hands or on the handlebars, so that can make things difficult. On the rear wheel, it's fixed in the frame. So even if it does get hit by wind, it's not going to twist. So that causes a big difference in how you perceive the wind on both the front and the back. When both wheels are the same depth on the front and rear, you can think of it like a seesaw, a teeter-totter. If I have a bar like this and I place my fingers in the middle, then the bar itself is balanced, both front and back. When you take a deeper rear wheel, and let's say you have a shallow front wheel profile, you're moving something called the center of pressure. So right now it's the same depth. The wind sort of acts in the middle of this bike. You can think of a line right here, like your seesaw line. If I take a deeper rear wheel, then what happens is as the wind hits it, like a kite or a big, if you're walking through the wind and you're holding a big sheet of plywood, you would have a lot more force on the back than you do on the front because the front is shallower. So what that does is it moves the center of pressure towards the rear of the bike. As the wind hits it, you're getting more force on the back and less force on the front. If we go back to our seesaw, you would think that if you move your hands this way, so center of pressure moving backwards, that's how it would act, but it's actually the opposite, because if I let this go, you can see that the force is emphasizing down on this side. So this becomes the side with the greater force. And the only reason this is different is because you're assuming that there's the same weight on both sides. So it just goes in backwards, goes in reverse, but this is sort of the same thing. So there's more force acting on this side now because the moment arm is longer. And you can see that if you consider the wind coming down, it's pushing more on the rear. So again, center of pressure moves from here further back when the rear wheel gets deeper. Now, why is that important? The big reason that is important is that the less force you have up front, the less interaction you're going to have with crosswind up front. So that's going to stabilize the bike because you've moved the center of pressure from the midpoint back to the rear. So you may be wondering about disc wheels and why some races make them illegal. Well, in truth, most times you're on a bike, a rear disc wheel is going to stabilize the bike because that's the deepest wheel you can have. Everything is covered and the force acting on that is going to be the greatest. It's going to move the center of pressure even further back, closer to the rear wheel. That's a good thing. There are a few races, like Kona and Cozumel, where discs are illegal. Now, the only reason that they're illegal on those races is because you have a very, very unique wind situation, wind conditions there. Most races, we've studied this, we've looked at the courses on numerous different occasions. We had a computer that we built that we mounted to the front of a bike to measure something called the relative yaw angle, which means the angle that the wind hits the bike. So generally it's between, most of the time, between 10 and negative 10 degrees. So if I'm looking at you at the camera and the wind is right on my nose, that would be 0, 10 degrees open this way and 10 degrees open this way, 80% of your time is spent there. So when you get wind interacting with a bike like that, you don't have a very strong side force. You don't have something coming straight across the road. In Kona, I've been there, and Cozumel, I've actually looked at it and studied it. It does come straight across the road. So the reason that they're illegal there is because when you have a deep wheel or any deep section, front or back, it's going to actually push the bike sideways. But in 99% of the situations, that's not the case. So most of the time, unless you're on a very unique course, a deeper rear wheel is going to make a more stable bike because you're moving the center of pressure from the midpoint to the rear and taking emphasis off the front steering axis where you have the most issues handling in the wind.